Thank you. Sir, can you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Jason Gady, last name Gady.
Sir, how are you employed?
Grand Rapids Police Department.
And how long have you been employed with Grand Rapids Police Department?
Since September of 2000, so 24, almost 5 years. Yeah.
Just going back a moment, prior to joining the department, did you attend college?
Yes.
And what degree did you attain?
From Grand Valley State University, a Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice.
Did you ultimately attend a police academy?
Yes, in Grand Valley State University Police Academy.
Now, going to your career here with GRPD, can you take us through some of the different positions that you've had?
I worked a number of years night shift road patrol, and then I worked in the training unit first time as a use of force instructor and also as a departmental recruiter. And I went back and worked in a community officer capacity, and then most recently went back to the training unit to work full-time as a use of force instructor with the primary focus of coordinating the firearms training program.
And it's been a while since I looked at your resume, but do you train only within Grand Rapids Police Department? Or do you train other departments as well?
No, I'm solely a Grand Rapids Police Department instructor.
That's what I thought. All right. And as a trainer in firearms and use of force, are you well versed in GRPD policies?
Yes.
On firearms in particular?
Yes.
And your full-time duties currently are firearms training at GRPD? Is that
Yes.
right? All right, I would move to have Officer Gady admitted as an expert in the field of Grand Rapids Police Department firearms training, policies, and practices.
Any objection?
No objection.
I think he will be considered an expert in that field.
We've had some witnesses go over a considerable amount of time and evidence about other training policies and all those topics, but I'd just like to focus on firearms with you if I could, and some of the training that Grand Rapids Police Department officers have on firearms. Can you give just a general overview of approximately how much firearm training an officer obtains going back to that 8-week in-house?
For the 8-week in-house, it's pretty substantial. It's anywhere from 60 to 70 hours of live firearms training, and that's not taking into account all the scenario-based training that incorporate deadly force decision-making with simunitions. On top of that, annual trainings and qualifications, anywhere from 4 to 6 times a year, several hours. So.
And I'm sure you could spend hours explaining every aspect of the training, but just in general, is the firearm training, is it purely shooting stationary targets, or does it also involve simulations and whatnot?
No, there's quite a bit of decision-making training built into either the live fire component and also scenario-based training.
Because reality out in the field, you're not, it's not always as simple as a stationary situation.
No.
Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
Are GRPD personnel trained to use various firearms?
Yes, we have different firearms platforms that we have to train and certify on every year.
Now, I'd like to move forward now to April 4, 2022, while Christopher Schurr was on patrol in the city. Did he carry a pistol?
Yes.
And as an officer within GRPD, are they required to train with the gun that they carry on the job?
Yes.
And an officer such as Officer Schurr here on road patrol, are they required to carry that gun on their person during their shift?
Yes.
Why is that?
In the event that they have to utilize that.
And where on their person, very law enforcement term, but where on their person is the officer required to carry the firearm?
Particularly for road patrol assignment, on their dominant side or their strong side hip on their assigned duty belt.
As they carry that pistol, does the pistol need to be loaded with ammunition?
Yes.
Why?
So in the event that an immediate response to a deadly force threat is addressed, it's ready to be utilized without any hesitation.
And are police trained that they may need to draw on fire that gun as fast as possible.
With
I'm sorry
accurate,
to interrupt, but can you speak louder?
I'm sorry, yes, Your Honor. Absolutely, with an accuracy component, yes,
Can threats come quickly at an officer?
absolutely.
Can it go from perhaps a no force, low level of force situation to deadly force pretty quickly?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to ask you just a little bit, not about firearm deployment or use, but just weapon drawing, a firearm drawing. When out in the field, and I'm not talking about training at the range, but when actually out on patrol, when are GRPD personnel trained that they should unholster and draw their pistol?
They can unholster and draw their pistol when there's a fear for safety.
Okay? And later on, does the officer then need to be able to articulate why they felt it was necessary to draw the pistol?
A lot of times it's articulated in their incident report. There is one. There's not a mandated reporting requirement, but a lot of times it does go into the incident report, yes.
And now, so it doesn't necessarily need to be a deadly force situation, just to simply draw the weapon.
Correct.
And is it fairly common that GRPD officers draw their firearms for various reasons?
Yes.
Okay. Now, moving on to firearm deployment, actually firing the gun, that's different than merely drawing the gun as far
Yes,
as the
correct.
standards. And under policies in place back April 2022, when was an officer trained to deploy their firearm?
In response to a deadly force threat? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Yes, when there is a reasonable threat of death or serious bodily injury to the officer or another person.
And firing their gun upon someone, what level of force would that be under policy?
Deadly force.
According to the use of force training and policies, if the officer believes deadly force is necessary, what is their objective when they deploy that firearm?
To stop these subjects' actions as quickly as possible.
Now, if it's deemed a deadly force situation, is a firearm the only way that they resort to deadly force, or can they basically use other means of force too to have deadly force?
They could use other means that would reasonably result in death or serious bodily injury to the suspect to meet that deadly force threat.
But if it's an imminent threat and the officer has a pistol, they're justified to use their pistol? Is that
Yes.
correct? I'm sorry, sir. It's been a full morning.
That's
I'm
all right.
trying not to ask you the same questions that we've already went over with some folks. Now, when it comes to this decision to use deadly force, use your firearm, does GRPD have policies that may lay out, some of the circumstances that may be reasonable for an officer to move up to a different level of force?
Yes, it's based on reasonableness, it's based on what we say totality of the circumstances, all the circumstances present at the time the officer had to make that decision.
And is one of the circumstances that's often talked about in firearms training in particular, reaction times?
Reaction time is something that we recognize in training, make the officers aware of, and also we try to minimize.
Now, we've already heard this topic brought up several times, but are officers warned and trained that they may be killed or injured when they don't react or act soon enough to a threat?
Yes, that's a possibility.
And in regards to firearm use of deadly force, I want to move on to the topic of targets, okay? And we're already moving along here, not too much to go. But if an officer decides to use their firearm against a deadly force threat, where are they trained that they may need to target?
Available target areas with the intent of stopping the suspect's actions as quickly as possible.
And not very pleasant topics, okay, to talk about, but you're a firearms trainer. Are headshots acceptable?
Yes,
And is that actually a target that's trained upon at times.
Yes.
Is an officer trained, if the officer perceives they might be in a deadly force situation, are they trained that they should fire warning shots?
No.
To see, experiment to see if perhaps that may help their situation?
Absolutely not.
Is that allowed? If you can just elaborate, is that allowed at
No,
all?
no, it is not allowed or advocated.
If an officer may be in fear of, serious bodily harm or injury, are they trained that they should perhaps try shooting to extremities or other parts of the body to see if perhaps that may alleviate the situation?
No. No.
Are they actually advised not to do that?
Yes, for several reasons.
But what's one of the main reasons?
One of the main-
If you have
again-
an imminent threat and you
Trying to, again, stop the subject's actions as quickly as possible.
with recruits and officers, is it a common topic that's discussed as far as even after an individual, say if they're wounded, that the threat can still be there?
Absolutely, yes.
Just going back to some general firearms, you mentioned the officer must carry their firearm with them at all times on road patrol, is that right?
Correct.
Now, moving on to the case here, you're obviously familiar with the case that we're all here on today.
Yes.
And have you had the opportunity to review the body cam, the in-dash cam, and the cell phone video from this matter?
I have.
Several times?
Yes.
Is that fair to say? Just want to talk about proximity. Does GRPD train officers on firearm use that they may need to use their firearm in close proximity to the subject?
We do, yes.
What is that sometimes referred to as?
Close quarters engagements, close quarters manipulation.
Now, if an officer, going to firearms training, okay, if an officer is in a physical struggle with a subject who's a deadly force threat, what sometimes is trained to the officer on simply backing away or disengaging from the subject?
There is times that we do train inside those close proximities to have to deploy your firearm because, first of all, they may be in a position with the subject, either they're on the ground, pinned, tangled up in a manner that the officer cannot engage physically. But if a deadly force threat presents itself, they still have to be able to meet that potentially with a handgun and be able to draw it, manipulate it, keep it in battery, and effectively utilize it, right? Another reason may be simply due to entanglement with a subject, due to physical exhaustion or physical limitations. The officer may not simply be able to quickly and effectively get up and disengage, right? So in that scenario, again, a deadly force threat presents itself. They may have to utilize, again, their handgun inside that close proximity. So those would be two big reasons why we train inside those close distances.
Okay. Just going to the case here, and we've already exhausted several of these topics, but as you review the case here, if an officer in Officer Schurr's position is in reasonable fear of serious injury or death, was there anything inappropriate about or unreasonable about the way that Officer Schurr drew and fired his pistol?
No.
If I could just have one moment here. Just in follow-up to that last point, okay?
Yes.
Obviously, one aspect of this case is the fact that a bullet hit Mr. Lyoya in the back of the head. Is there anything about the fact that it was a headshot like this that's unreasonable in a deadly force situation.
Unreasonable? No.
That's all, thank you.
It's Officer Day, right?
Yes, sir.
Kind of, why did you refuse to meet with Detective Sergeant Tubergen about your testimony?
At this point, due to proximity to the case, I just didn't feel it was necessary.
He was gonna ask you about what your testimony was, right? You knew that it was about the case, so we wanted to know what you're gonna testify to, right?
Yes, sir.
And you just, on yourself, decided not to, it's not necessary.
Correct.
Why, how could it not be necessary? Isn't it important to have, give information so people can know what you're gonna say and be able to share in open court?
I guess I didn't know the full context of the meeting, or,
You don't know the full context, you didn't reach out to him, you had to go through your sergeant, or excuse me, your captain, right?
that's who contacted me, yes.
So,
I guess that would object to relevance here.
I think it goes to bias, Your Honor, why would we refuse to meet with an officer on the opposing side? Under no obligation to you.
Relevance.
Right, so relevance as to why he wouldn't, Mr. Becker?
I think it goes to bias, Your Honor.
Or credibility, I'll allow it, I'll overrule that objection.
So what, is it common practice for you just to not take it upon yourself, not to meet with opposing counsel when you're called in other cases?
Haven't been contacted like that in any cases prior in any of my experience.
So the one time you are, you just say, you blow it off and say, I'm not gonna do it.
Blow off was probably not the right term, but
Oops. Fix that. For the record, reflecting showing opposing counsel, we marked to exhibit 37. No.
Sorry, Your Honor, I'm just not familiar with this, I'm just taking a quick look here. Let the record reflect that I'm showing the witness will be marked as People's Exhibit 37 for identification purposes. Sure, you recognize that?
yes, sir.
What is it?
It appears to be a training outline from the recruit class that Officer Schurr was part of.
And
Training.
the recruit class, can you tell how you tell that? What are you referring to?
I see RC dash or 1501 at the top.
And your name's on that?
Yes,
What does that indicate to you?
that I was part of the training that day.
Let the record, could I move for the admission of People's Exhibit 37, Your Honor?
Objection?
No objection.
Exhibit 37 is not
So now, in terms of that, part of that was guns and vehicles, right?
Yes,
And that was the gist of this training, is how to deal with guns being in vehicles.
that's what it indicates.
And is this the only time you would have trained a defendant?
The only time I would have trained,
Yeah, I mean,
Officer
there's one,
Schurr.
we got one record of training. Have you trained him in other situations?
I would have helped out through different trainings throughout that recruit class orientation.
So are you assigned as part of the recruit class? I mean, is that, or, let me figure out. Are you as a training officer, do different training officers get assigned to a specific class and then you're not a part of a class, or is it all the time you're
There's
training?
quite a few of us, so we will plug in with certain components, trainings of that class throughout the 8 weeks.
So you plugged in for the firearms training regarding that class.
Some of the firearms training, yes.
Did you work with us, the defendant?
Yes,
After he,
yes.
like, how so?
Through mandatory trainings, annual qualifications, those assigned trainings throughout the years that Officer Schurr was
So
employed with us.
how many times since 2015 have you been involved with some sort of training with him?
With Officer Schurr,
Correct.
I can't throw a number on it, but there would have been a good handful. Yeah.
Good handful, is that 10, is that?
Without going back on all the detailed training records, because we have hundreds of trainings throughout the year that we put, all of our sworn officers through several times a year, so.
Have you worked with him then on just a day-to-day basis too?
Had I worked with him, I didn't never work the road patrol assignment with him,
Like, so just purely training?
purely training.
Thank you, Evan.
Sir, this case is from April of 2022, is that correct?
Yes,
You've been with the Firearms Training Department since then, for the most part?
yes, I've been a firearms instructor since then.
Over the 3 years or so, did anybody from the prosecutor's office or the detective
Here ever reach out to you or anyone else from the training department to perhaps ask for some more explanation, clarification, or any questions about this
You're gonna have to
case?
object. The training department, we did work with the training department, so it's kind of a broad question.
I mean, I guess you could be more, I mean, if you're saying it's a broad question, you can just be
I
more
am.
specific.
Did anybody reach out to you or any of your close firearm instructors for any questions on this prior to a couple weeks ago?
I can speak for myself, and the answer
That's
is
fine, that's better to do, I'm sorry.
no.
No, okay. And you were recently reached out to, and did the defense advise you not to get back to the prosecutor or anything like that?
Nobody advised me not to, no.
Okay. Now, that sheet there, guns and vehicles,
Yes,
and I'm not sure, so maybe the point, you've known Officer Schurr on and off over the years?
I have, yes.
Is there anything about the testimony that you provided about basic firearm training and basic firearm use that was biased for Officer Schurr?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
I do see at least one question on the jury. My clerk can drive that for me. stop the area of threat and to stop the subject's actions, but it's not okay to aim or target hands or arms if that is the area of threat.
Yes, so to clarify, it's not advisable, first of all, when an officer has to deploy deadly force on a suspect, particularly using a firearm, accuracy is of great concern, okay? So that's the other thing too. Accuracy diminishes the smaller the target area. And also, it doesn't make it any less potentially lethal. Deadly force, anything that an officer is going to deliver that would reasonably result in death or serious bodily injury to the suspect is, we don't differentiate between where it is. However, if we need to very immediately and quickly stop the subject's actions, again, hitting in an extremity may not accomplish that. If that clarifies it all, yeah.
Mr. Dodge, any follow-up?
Just if I think you explained it well, officer, but let's just say you have a stationary target, okay, like a human body target. If the target were to have a pistol in the hand, raised, you know, and you're teaching the officer where to aim, would you aim to shoot the hand or the weapon?
No, absolutely not. And again, one big reason would be the accuracy component. The likelihood of a miss would be much higher than a larger target area. So
And where are you justified to
The larger-
generally aim?
generally aim, center mass, head, any of those vital areas that, again, are going to have a much greater effect on quickly stopping that, the subject's actions.
And in reality, are those areas that are likely to end
Yes,
in death?
yes, more likely.
Okay. It's deadly force, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President?
Anything further, Your Honor?